Near the Chesapeake Bay, farms have flourished for hundreds of years on the rich, fertile soil of coastal Maryland. But as sea levels rise, driven in part by climate change, encroaching saltwater is quickly disrupting the lives and livelihoods of many farmers. A preview of what other farming areas near saltwater may soon be confronting. William Brangham reports for our ongoing series on climate change and water, Tipping Point.
When I bought this farm, this field was perfect. Now the tide comes in and out of here all the time.
Kevin Anderson's farm near Princess Anne, Maryland, is now plagued by saltwater.
In this area that we're standing here now, in the last 90 days, I would tell you it's had water on it at least half the time.
This cornfield is nestled near a creek connected to the Chesapeake Bay. And a decade ago, he says that saltwater mostly stayed in the creek. But now, it's increasingly coming onshore, making some of his land completely unfarmable.
There's an acre of corn right here that costs $650 an acre to grow that I won't make a dime off of, because nothing productive will come from that.
It really depends on the soil.
About 30 miles away, a group of researchers who study sea level rise and saltwater intrusion, as this phenomenon is known, are trying to help farmers find solutions for what could be a potentially existential threat from all that saltwater.
And I think many of us are thinking about carbon storage.
The University of Maryland's Kate Tully is one of the conference organizers. She studies the connections between agriculture and ecology.
When we have this concept of climate change, we kind of think of it as something that's gonna happen. And what we were saying is it is happening.
The Delmarva Peninsula, bordered by the Atlantic to the east and the Chesapeake Bay to the west, is experiencing sea level rise at 3 times the global average. That's driven by climate change, but the land here is also slowly sinking. As a result, low-lying farmland is being lost at an alarming rate as saltwater continues to flow onto the land from storms and higher tides, and below the land as saltwater keeps infiltrating the groundwater. In a study published last year, Tully and her colleagues showed how visible salt patches on land almost doubled from 2011 to 2017, and about 20,000 farmable acres were transformed into marsh.
So that's pretty staggering, especially because the time period was small. And so we're kind of this test bed. So we don't have a lot of time, and people are looking to this region for solutions, right? Because we might be a couple years, 10 years ahead of what folks are going to see in other parts of the world.
Perhaps the starkest example of what salt can do to this landscape is right here. This is what they call a ghost forest. And 20 years ago, all those white stumps that you see behind me were living green pine trees.
As salty water crept into this forest, it poisoned all those trees, like it does to most crops. It's the exact fate farmer Wendell Meekins is trying to avoid in his nearby fields.
The soil structure has gone from a farmable, tillable soil, and it's changing into a marshland. All of this now has become what you would essentially look at as a river bottom.
A massive tidal surge of salt water last year killed 65 acres of corn that he'd planted on these fields.
I mean, it just devastated this whole crop. It was a 100% loss.
Meekins says managing salty water in this low-lying region has always been a challenge. The fields here are flanked by ditches designed to keep the tidal flows away from his crops. This year, he built up more protection.
Oh, this is a berm that we've tried to put up. I'd say this is about 3 feet higher than your ditch bank here, trying to keep some of the tidal surge at bay.
But he acknowledges it's all just a Band-Aid.
If we see the water changes that I've seen in 2023 and 2024 and 2025, we're in big, big trouble here.
So you think it's crystal clear that farming cannot continue over the long haul here?
Not here, nope. 100% over.
How has this salt patch expanded in your memory, over time?
Researcher Kate Tully says there are some crops that might survive in saltier soil, like sorghum or even quinoa.
Some farmers will start planting sorghum or another crop that might be more salt tolerant and have less inputs but it's going to have a lower return on it. I mean, it's a lower
You don't get as much money out of sorghum.
as you do out of corn. But I will say that in most cases, some of these farms where you see that salt damage, it's a little too late to really sort of remediate that property.
Fifth-generation farmer Kevin Anderson says he's desperate for some clear guidance.
We just don't know what to do. There's not a program, there's not a strategy. We're just kind of left out here for each individual farmer to see what works and what doesn't work with our own time and our own money.
He too has considered building a barrier against the tide, but isn't sure if it's worth the investment.
We're looking for someone to help us draw a line in the sand and say, this elevation is where you need to protect. And from this elevation below, in 20 years, it's not going to be here.
To help farmers get a handle on how their lands are changing, the University of Delaware's Jared Miller uses drones to photograph how crops are growing and matches those with measurements of salinity in the soil.
A lot of times with agricultural research, we might have yield at the end of the season, but what drones have provided us with is measurements of plant growth or correlations to plant growth throughout the season. It's been another piece of information that's really helped us line up and make sure that our soil measurements we're taking match what we expected.
Miller says data like this can help farmers make tricky economic calculations.
It's a tight margin on that grain, so every time you lose an acre, you lose yield. And there's only so many acres left on Delmarva to make any money off of. So every time we lose this bit, you might be cutting into someone's bottom line or their survival.
But with sea level expected to rise nearly 3 feet in this region by 2100, a lot of current farmland will likely turn to salt marsh.
On the positive side, if we thoughtfully manage these agricultural fields as they are starting to be intruded, we could allow that to sort of transition into a marsh, and that would store a lot of carbon underground, and it actually can serve as a buffer for storm surge.
But for farmers like Wendell Meekins, finding ways to save agricultural land while he can is his top priority.
We need to protect what we have here now and find a use for it. It really takes some thinking, to do something the right way for future generations.
A future that will include higher sea levels in a region with more than 2,500 miles of coastline. For the PBS NewsHour, I'm William Brangham on the eastern shore of Maryland.